In the migrant-dominated neighborhoods, people on the streets are calling the shots tonight. Rioters erect barricades. Drivers are threatened with weapons. 6 armed agents breaking into a home and stealing a man's laptop and his cell phone because he posted a cartoon on the internet. The inflation-adjusted incomes are down. And this is the problem. That means roughly 1/3 of the population they do not save. Now, Germany is facing a 3rd straight year of economic crisis, with most Germans increasingly worried about making ends meet. Despite Germany's image of fairy tale castles and economic strength, things here are actually much more challenging than they seem. Since 2003, residential rents in Germany's top 8 cities have soared by more than 50%, and between 2010 and 2022, asking rents across Germany surged by 50% overall. And in the biggest cities, they shot up by as much as 70%. The capital city of Berlin has consistently registered some of the fastest rising housing prices in the world, leaving many residents in a constant struggle to make ends meet. While the poverty rate in Berlin is 13.7% according to conventional calculations, this rises to 20.8% when housing costs are taken into consideration. In Munich, already one of Germany's most expensive cities, rental costs have climbed by 25% since 2022, pushing many residents to the outskirts in search of affordability. Meanwhile, in Hamburg, a 30% rise in rent over the last decade has forced an increasing number of people into shared housing or long commutes just to keep up with costs. People are in much more of a cost of living crisis than they were at the last election in 2021. In Berlin, the average annual salary required to afford a typical private rental is approximately 67,600 euros, which is more than double the median after-tax salary of 37,800 euros. Purchasing a home is equally challenging. In medium-sized cities, a prospective buyer needs an annual income of around 68,500 euros, significantly higher than the national average salary of 50,250 euros. This means that even some of the country's highest income earners are struggling to buy the homes they want. In fact, Germany has one of the lowest homeowner rates in the EU, with over 50% of the country renting. In cities like Munich and Frankfurt, couples in the top 5% of earners often find it difficult to upgrade from a small apartment to a larger home due to skyrocketing property prices. Combine this with a growing cost of living crisis, rising crime rates, immigration challenges, and serious concerns over freedom of speech, and it's clear that Germany is in big trouble. This marks a dramatic shift from the Germany that was once seen as a model of stability and prosperity. We have a lot of red tape, we have high corporate taxes, we have bad schools, bad roads, and high energy prices. So what's happening here? And what went so drastically wrong? Today, on Across the Globe, we'll be exploring why living in Germany has become impossible. The CDU and CSU have not only lost considerable votes, but they have actually received the message from the citizens. They should now no longer be in government, but go in opposition. Olaf Scholz, who became Chancellor of Germany in 2021, represents a significant shift in German politics, leading the Social Democratic Party, SPD, in a traffic light coalition with the Greens and the Free Democratic Party, FDP. His election marked a departure from 16 years of Angela Merkel's leadership. Initially, Scholz seemed to garner support for his approach to the post-Merkel transition. But as the realities of his administration unfolded, his popularity dwindled. The multifaceted challenges presented by the ongoing Ukraine war, economic instability, and an escalating energy crisis have contributed to a decline in public approval, with polls reflecting that his ratings have dropped below those of previous chancellors at similar points in their terms. The failure to invest in digital infrastructure, the failure to invest in physical infrastructure, this obsession with a debt break, all these things, Germany itself could have done better. One of the most pressing issues under Scholz's leadership has been immigration. In 2022, Germany saw net migration figures soaring to approximately 1.5 million, largely due to an influx of Ukrainian refugees. While Germany has a long history of welcoming migrants, this surge has ignited heated debates regarding integration, social services capacity, and housing availability, leaving many citizens concerned about their community's resilience. Today, Germany is one of the most popular destinations for immigrants in the world, with well over 1 million people moving there each year since 2013. As of 2019, around 13.7 million people living in Germany, or about 17% of the population, are first-generation immigrants. Yet, around 68% of Germans believe that the country should take in fewer refugees, according to the latest Deutschland Trend monthly survey conducted by public broadcaster ARD. And about 22% believe that the current level of admissions should be maintained, and only 3% could imagine taking in more refugees. This paints a worrying picture about the German people's trust in their leader, Scholz. 76% of Germans say Scholz lacks leadership skills, and 58% believe he's not doing his job well, according to a survey by public broadcaster ZDF. To better understand why many German residents don't have faith in Scholz's grand plan, it's worthwhile taking a brief journey back in time to explore the country's history. Germany's history is marked by dramatic transformations that have shaped its identity and geography. Located in Central Europe, it's been a crossroads of cultures and ideas for centuries. Following the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in the early 19th century and the unification in 1871, Germany emerged as a significant industrial power. However, the country faced severe challenges, including the aftermath of 2 world wars, the division during the Cold War, and the reunification in 1990. Over the decades, Germany has grappled with immigration issues, oscillating between periods of openness and restriction. In the post-World War II era, Gastarbeiter, guest workers, were encouraged to fill labor shortages, but this influx eventually led to difficulties with integration and an increase in illegal immigration. The 2015 refugee crisis further strained the system, leading to rising public concerns over crime rates, social cohesion, and the economy, which has seen fluctuations, particularly amid the recent energy crisis. It was this year that German Chancellor Angela Merkel decided to allow over 1 million asylum seekers to cross the border into Germany, a decision that was met with much public backlash. Germany now has the highest number of asylum requests in the world, as the country struggles to deal with this massive influx. New refugees arrive every day. Many have traveled weeks or even years to get to German soil. Historically, Germany's early views on immigration, seeing it as a necessary economic resource, have morphed into a complex debate about national identity and security, influencing the country's current social and political landscape. In the 1990s, for example, the country accepted refugees from the Yugoslav wars. Around 700,000 people fled these wars, and the majority of these refugees were given temporary protection and were able to work in Germany. However, this had a negative effect on the country's already existing housing problems, which are still felt today. As of 2025, if you visit Berlin and speak with locals, many will likely be more than ready to discuss the housing situation. As we mentioned, asking rents across Germany surged in recent years. The numbers might not sound super shocking if you're used to places like London or Paris, but for Berliners, many of whom relied on the city's supposed affordability, this has been an absolute disaster. What's worse is the share of income people now spend on housing. The OECD has warned that up to 40% of households in Germany could soon be shelling out 40% or more of their monthly income on rent. Landlords have also been gaming the system. They'll list units as furnished temporary apartments and charge mind-blowing per square meter prices. Think 30 to 50 euros compared to the normal average of around 8 to 10 euros for older leases. Tenants are very well protected, which is good and it's totally fine. But what that does is it actually creates a bad incentive for immigrants or people who are moving to cities because they're actually only able to get properties that, for example, are furnished and come onto the market at much higher prices. So recent reports have found that in the 5 largest German cities, these temporary furnished places cost an average of 28.85 euros per square meter, about 11 euros higher than a typical unfurnished rental. The logic? With short-term contracts, landlords can reset the rent more often and circumvent rent control rules. This kills the whole image of Germany as a tenant-friendly place. Munich represents Germany's long-standing housing nightmare, with cold rents averaging close to 19 euros per square meter in some prime districts, though it can get even higher. People who work in Munich proper but want an affordable home often end up in satellite towns, facing a commute that could be 90 minutes each way. The small town of Karlsfeld near Munich grabbed headlines when it was reported that the average rent there was over 10.8 euros per square meter. That doesn't sound so high, some might think, but that's cold rent before utilities. Then add side costs like maintenance fees and heating, and you're well into the teens. In real numbers, a 70 square meter, about 750 square foot flat could easily exceed 1,500 euros a month when all is said and done.
Gut, wunderbar, sagen, mit 40 Jahren, das ist eine Sache für sich. Also, genau, wir kämpfen dafür, dass wir genug Wohnungen haben.
Construction of new housing isn't keeping up. While the federal government aimed for 400,000 new homes a year, in 2022 they only reached about 295,300 completions, leaving a deficit of over 100,000 from the target, and an estimated shortfall of 700,000 dwellings overall. Despite all the talk from politicians, people on the ground just aren't seeing enough new affordable units popping up. Unsurprisingly, the German Tenants Association expects millions more families to become overburdened by rent. For a country famous for its well-regulated, tenant-friendly system, that's a pretty bitter pill to swallow. Germany is Europe's largest economy, clocking in with a GDP of over 3.8 trillion euros in 2024. On paper, that's huge. But if you're a middle-class family in Stuttgart or Leipzig, you might not feel any of that prosperity because you can't afford an apartment bigger than 60 square meters. Your grocery bill is up by 18% compared to 2 years ago, and you're reading news about stabbings every other day. So then you wonder, where's this giant economic success going? Germany reported about 5.9 million criminal offenses in 2023, a 5.5% bump from the year before. Suspects numbered 2.3 million, more than at any time since 2016, including more than 920,000 cases involving non-German suspects. People can argue the significance of that percentage all day, but it's the eye-grabbing violent crimes that really drive public fear. In 2023, violent offenses reached 214,099, up 8.6%, and the cases of intentional simple bodily harm increased by 7.4% to 429,157, something particularly frightening because it can happen anywhere, on a train, in a public park, or walking home at night.
Violent crimes reached a 15-year high. Nearly half of all criminal suspects do not hold a German passport, reigniting calls for tougher immigration controls.
Worrying about your safety is one thing, but worrying about how you're going to get by day to day is a different kind of fear. About 17.7 million people, or 21.2% of Germany's total population, face the imminent danger of poverty in 2023. As of 2025, although Germany is considered to have such a strong economy, it ranks 19th on the list of poverty rates for OECD countries, with a poverty rate of 11.6%. And recent data suggested by the left-wing populist VSW party shows around 3.2 million pensioners in Germany are at risk of poverty as well. You might be thinking, sure, these kinds of issues rattle the foundations of almost every country in the world, and that would be fair to say. But what if we told you that the people of Germany now have another concern that's very fresh in their minds, one that many thought they would never have? There is now growing tension around free speech and how it's policed within the country.
We have the freedom of speech in Europe, and in Germany everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. What we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions.
Critics like U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who called Germany's approach Orwellian at the Munich Security Conference, say that while hateful content is a problem, the government is going too far. They see a slippery slope, asking, what exactly is clearly illegal content? Meanwhile, Chancellor Olaf Scholz defends these measures, noting that extreme ideologies need to be stomped out before they get a foothold. For many ordinary Germans, it translates into a sense of, I need to watch what I say on Facebook or Twitter, or I could get in trouble. Mainstream conservative politicians like CDU leader Friedrich Merz, meanwhile, promise stricter border controls, more deportations, and a clampdown on anything that smells like clan crime. But with every high-profile crime, the public pressure intensifies, and the debate becomes more polarized. This is all a far cry from the Germany that used to pride itself on well-thought-out, methodical policy. German inflation soared to about 7.9% in 2022, the highest annual figure since the early 1980s. And although it dipped slightly in 2023, many everyday items remain expensive. Energy costs have been another shocker. After the war in Ukraine disrupted gas supplies and the government sped up its phase-out of nuclear power, electricity and heating bills became a monthly source of dread for a lot of people. A poll by the German Institute for Economic Research showed that 45% of households say they've drastically cut back on discretionary spending to cover utility bills in winter 2023-24. To top it off, everyday freedoms feel a bit pinched. While Germany never had the absolute free speech culture of, say, the US, the increasing clampdowns and police raids for online comments are new territory for a lot of Germans. In 2024, over 33,963 right-wing crimes were registered, some of which involved purely online expression, like extremist propaganda or hate slogans. That's not to say hate speech shouldn't be addressed, but many worry that lines are being blurred between actually inciting violence and just being offensive or contrarian online. It's made people more cautious about venting frustrations on social media, including frustrations about how the country is being run. As the challenges mount, it is increasingly evident that a significant portion of the German population is feeling uneasy and disillusioned with their government. Following a decade of rising dissatisfaction, Germans report the largest drop in life satisfaction among all EU countries, placing them among the least happy in Europe. This decline in well-being is particularly striking, especially when considering that Germany ranks only second to Bulgaria, often viewed as a poorer nation grappling with its own crises, in terms of overall quality of life. This stark reality underscores the urgency for Chancellor Olaf Scholz to take decisive action and uphold the promises made during his campaign. As citizens grapple with pressing issues like immigration, crime, and the cost of living, the demand for transparent leadership and effective solutions has never been more critical. If Scholz aims to restore public trust and improve the lives of Germans, he must address these concerns head-on and demonstrate a commitment to constructive change. What about why living in the UK has become impossible?